Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Piedmont Trails. Welcome to the attic. Welcome to my messy desk. Oh, to those of you who don't know me, my name is Carol, and I want to welcome you to episode number 49 entitled Let Freedom Ring, the Mecklenburg Declaration. This particular podcast will not be aired on Spotify. We will not be broadcasting it on Spotify, and there's a reason for that. This particular podcast will include approximately 7 to 10 different segments. Okay. That is in order for us to get all of the evidence, all of the research that we have been able to locate so far and get it all in for everyone to browse through, listen to, go through, research on your own, and make your own decision about the Mecklenburg Declaration. This is one of the most highly debated documents, alleged documents, that proclaimed independence from Great Britain in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina on May 20th, 1775. A lot of books have been written on the subject, many articles, many magazine articles, newspaper articles. Even the New York Times acknowledged the debate over the Mecklenburg Declaration many years ago. We are here to offer our research, our evidence of what we have been able to uncover. Pretty extraordinary, to say the least. And it will take at least 7 to 10 segments of these podcast episodes to get everything in. It may even linger more. Only time will tell. We are still continuing research on this. We want to thank you so much for joining us. We also want to take this moment out and thank all of our friends, our fellow researchers who have helped us with this project, and to our family for being understanding and patient with us as we continue to uncover more about the Mecklenburg Declaration. As we said, this is an introduction to the series, and we will begin with the Magna Charter of North Carolina, issued by King Charles II. The Carolina Charter is completely different from any other charter issued on any of the other British colonies. And there's a reason for that. And it allowed more freedom to the people that resided within the boundaries of this colony in any other colony. And a lot of people overlook this as one of the prime reasons why people later and families later would migrate into North Carolina. Yes, there was land. Yes, there was a chance for colonial status, prosperity, growth. But there was also that Carolina Charter that allowed more freedom than any other charter written and put into establishment for any of the other British colonies. That's important. There were other things that contributed to the onset of May 20th, May 19th, and then May 20th of 1775. We're going to get into all of them. There are a couple of things that we want to say before we really get into this, and they are, first thing, we are not here to squabble or debate over the verbiage used in the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America. We are not going to go there. This is one of the prime excuses, prime reasons for debate. Number one question is that the Mecklenburg Declaration was written again in 1819 from memory from one of the people who were there. And how can they remember it from 1775 to 1819? Who knows? How do we know that they're correct? This is just ongoing. We're not here to discuss that at all. We're not here to debate over the verbiage, whether Thomas Jefferson plagiarized the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America from the Mecklenburg Declaration. That's not why we're here. The Mecklenburg Declaration stood for independence in a particular county in North Carolina in 1775. It did not stand for anything else other than that. And so we're not going to get into the verbiage. Okay. Second, we are here to present the evidence from the very beginning, Carolina Charter, to present day. And there's a lot of evidence, a lot of things to go through. Third, we are preserving this evidence for future generations because it's our duty. It's our duty as United States citizens to preserve our past. It's our duty to our country, our duty to our neighbors, our friends, our family, and it's also our duty to the people who lived before us. It's a respected duty to acknowledge their actions and what they stood for. Not here to debate whether it was right or wrong or judge them. We're here to acknowledge and respect their actions, to acknowledge and respect. And lastly, we are here today for truth, justice, and liberty. And that's what it's all about. Truth, justice, and liberty. You know, with freedom and liberty and independence, it didn't begin within the walls of the Continental Congress, okay? It began within the people. It originated among the people who, just ordinary people living out their lives from day to day, trying to do the best that they can for their family and their friends. It began with them. It did not begin living within a tavern or within the walls of a home, okay? If you really go deep with this subject and freedom and independence, you'll find out that it began within the people's hearts. And that's how it grew. It grew from that point onward. And I think it's important to recognize that. Now, I know what your question is already. You're going to say, Carol, do you believe that the Mecklenburg Declaration is factual? Do you believe that it actually existed? Do you believe that the men who came together for a meeting beginning on May 19th in the courthouse located in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, do you think they voted unanimously upon a Mecklenburg Declaration declaring independence from Great Britain? Yes, I do. I wholeheartedly believe that the Mecklenburg Declaration is real. So before we go any further, there's an answer to your question. That's my personal opinion. Now for the evidence, okay? Like I said, we're going to begin. I'm going to set the stage a little bit. I'm going to point out very important events that occurred that I felt like contributed to the stage, okay, of the Mecklenburg Declaration. And then our very next segment is going to go into the day that the Battle of Concord arrived, about the Battle of Lexington and Concord arrived in the Piedmont area of North Carolina. It took a while for news to travel, but this date of when it arrived is very significant in accordance to the Mecklenburg Declaration. And that will be our next segment on this podcast. And we're going to go deep into that, on those occurrences and what happened, how did they get news about it, and so forth. But first, let's get back into our introduction. The Magna Charter, the Great Charter of North Carolina, granted by King Charles II to the Lord Proprietors. In this charter were legal binding warranties that contained specific rights to the people, and was treated as a legal business transaction, which was not common in other colonies, not common at all. A level of freedom was placed on the people of North Carolina that was equal to, and in some cases greater than, their contemporaries residing in England. These liberties and privileges granted to the people, not because they were English, but because the majority of the inhabitants in the Piedmont region were not of English descent, so that had nothing to do with it. The primary reason that they were given these rights and privileges was because they were citizens of Carolina and the Charter. The people of North Carolina were among the freest in all of the colonies. They were among the freest in all of the colonies. You can find correspondence from Governor Burrington to the Duke of Newcastle dated 1731, and him proclaiming this as well in several letters and correspondence and much more detail. I urge each of you to look up the Carolina Charter and carefully read it, carefully understand it. This is one of the primary reasons why many people chose to migrate to North Carolina. Freedom. They had more freedom in Carolina than any other colony. Other things that contributed to the setting the stage for the Mecklenburg Declaration is after the 7 Years' War, the French and Indian War, Great Britain was financially strained, as most of you, I'm sure, already know. And in order to ease this burden, there were taxes that were never required before, but now they were being placed on all of the colonists. In North Carolina, there were a huge amount of protests and demonstrations by the people and the leaders of the colony who opposed these taxes, and they considered them as violations against their rights in accordance to the charter. Okay. The Vestry Act scarred the land, all right, and it resulted with county petitions prohibiting the tax. It prohibited the Church of England, and it was against politics that were involved in this whole scandal, is what I call it, surrounding the Vestry Act. In fact, a petition from the inhabitants of Mecklenburg County dated 1769 demanded their freedom of religion to be restored in accordance to the Great Charter, a legal binding contract, the Great Charter of Carolina. That's important. That stands out. That was 1769, okay? The contract, Carolina Charter, is brought up again, and we find it again in 1761 with Royal Governor Dobbs. And he's described in the North Carolina Assembly thinking, well, they think they're entitled to all of these privileges of a British House of Commons. They think they're entitled to all of this. The Charter made that so. They had more freedom, even though, years later, they're trying to squash this freedom. They're trying to say, no, that's not what it means. No, this isn't it. They weren't getting very well. They weren't doing very well with the people in North Carolina over this. They were not. And, the people, as the more that they learned about the legal contract, the more that they would bring it up. And it was brought up often, very often. And they reminded their leaders of the business transaction in which the charter entailed. Another important event that takes place that sets the stage for the Mecklenburg Declaration is the regulator movement. It doesn't matter which side you were on when it comes to the North Carolina regulators. Doesn't matter when it comes to this. Because Mecklenburg County, from what I can gather, supplied at least 300 men who traveled from Mecklenburg County to the Battle of Alamance in 1771 and who participated in that battle against the North Carolina regulators. Thomas Polk, one of the main characters that we're going to really get into, he is a militia leader of at least over 80 men who march from Charlotte, North Carolina, to the Battle of Alamance. That's important to remember because it's also just as important to remember what happened after the Battle of Alamance. Because some of these same men who participated in that battle against North Carolina regulators were also involved in other activities that were led by, and I want to get the names correct, they were led by John Ashe and Thomas Lloyd, which we will get more detail about as well. They contributed a lot to the onset of the Mecklenburg Declaration. What occurs during this time is that the same men who marched and participated in the Battle of Alamance against the North Carolina regulators some of them were required by Thomas Lloyd and John Ashe to take the oath of allegiance to the king. This was disrespectful. These men proclaimed, I marched to the Battle of Alamance, and I protected what I felt my mother country against these North Carolina regulators. And here you come into my house, and you're going to demand, or the tavern, or wherever they were, and you're going to demand that I take the oath of allegiance to the king. Have I not proven myself already? This was disrespect, and it did occur. This was another scar upon the land, another big scar. Also, there were many who were traveling with the militia. They were involved with crop burning, farm burning, land confiscation, removals of families of North Carolina regulators, and this did not set well with many of these men later on. There are several reasons why the actions that were carried out by Thomas Lloyd and John Ashe, why these actions of farm burning and removal of families didn't set well with a lot of these men who were serving during the militia and actually involved in some of these activities. There's a reason why it didn't set well, and there's several. One, economic issue. The pressures that many and a great majority of these men were farmers, they were merchants, they were land agents, they were involved in a lot of different things. And when you are removing quite a large number of families from the area, which a great many of them left in the autumn of 1771, never to return to North Carolina. And I've discussed this in several videos and several live streams and explained this into detail, and with articles on Piedmont Trails, the aftermath of the Battle of Alamance. It created economic pressure upon the local communities in the Piedmont region afterwards. Okay. Another reason is that they saw firsthand what could possibly happen if the tables were turned. They witnessed it. They participated in it. And they saw it firsthand what could happen. Okay? The local churches, after the Battle of Alamance, were still opposing the 10 shillings per taxable soul in order to build brand new churches and hire and feed and house clergymen for the Church of England. This was not going well at all in the Piedmont area, and especially in Mecklenburg County. This is Presbyterians, and they know they have their rights to religion, and they are pushing it. And they are not participating. They don't want anything to do with the Church of England. They know, in accordance to the Carolina Charter, they have their right to worship in the way that they see fit. And they felt that this 10 shillings per taxable soul was wrong. Again, a scar upon the land. People did not take lightly to giving their money to support a religion that was not their belief and went against their morals. And the majority of the inhabitants of Mecklenburg County were Presbyterians, and Reverend Alexander Craighead, which is one that we will definitely get into in very much detail, did not let his congregation forget their rights or their obligations to their faith. Another event that sets the stage for Mecklenburg Declaration is Henry McCullough. Henry McCullough arrives in Mecklenburg County in the year 1764. He is representing Lord Selwyn, and he is informing several men and family who are living upon their lands and have been for several years that they don't own that land and that they need to purchase it from him. Okay? Big issue in Mecklenburg and surrounding counties. It wasn't long before McCulloch and his comrades were met with resistance from Thomas Polk, who led a party to engage in violence. It was a violent engagement. Many people refer to it as the War on Sugar Creek in several letters and documents that we had came across. It's ironic that later Thomas Polk arranged a meeting with Henry McCulloch, and they came to an understanding, to an agreement. Thomas Polk is very, very unique and very, very interesting. He is a shrewd businessman. He is a shrewd negotiator. We will get into that. But this sets the stage as well. Somebody coming in saying, you don't own the property. You don't own it. I don't care how long you've lived on here. I don't care how many taxes you've paid. I don't care what you have got, what paperwork you have. You don't own this. Lord Selwyn owns it, and I'm representing him, and you're going to have to buy it from me if you want to stay. There are many, many other things that contribute, that set the stage for this. Queens College is one other one. This dates back to many, many years. Also, the Charlotte courthouse is a prime debate where materials are furnished. The courthouse is actually built, and the materials are never reimbursed to the people. Their labor is not paid for. Actually, the Queen College is the facility, the building is actually built. It becomes a major hospital area during the American Revolutionary War. I think Cornwallis had stayed there. Cornwallis had even stayed in Thomas Polk's home during the American Revolutionary War. But Queens College is another big debate that does set the stage for Mecklenburg Declaration. There were promises made that were never kept by Royal Governor Dobbs, by Royal Governor Tryon, and there were other small things that just kept adding up, building up. In other words, it was just more fire, adding more fuel to the fire that was already burning. And each incident that happened added more fuel to the fire. Absolutely. Okay, I have set the stage for you with all the primary events. There are more events that are much smaller that do help to set the stage for the Mecklenburg Declaration, and we will get into them as we get in deeper into the series. I do want to let you know that references and sources that are used during each of these segments will be shown to you at the end of each episode. They will include various documents, photographs, links to other research material, any items that we were able to obtain research from. We will share them with you on after the end of each episode. We want to make sure that we want to encourage you all to not just take our research and then say, okay, well then I'm convinced. Carol said this and she showed me this, and I believe it. We want to encourage everyone to get out there and research further. You never know. You may stumble across something that may be very extraordinary. And I want to say this. We know that the Mecklenburg Resolves were actually published. Okay? They were published in the North Carolina Gazette, and they were also published in the Cape Fear Mercury. These are both primary colonial newspapers of the day. And Thomas Jefferson, he went as far as to saying that he thought it spurious and that the resolves never came into being. They were not true. And I will say that the resolves have been proven without a doubt. What everybody seems to question is the legitimacy of the Mecklenburg Declaration. We will get into the resolves, and we will distinguish the differences between the resolves and the actual declaration. We will offer you our opinion, and we will also offer you our evidence of what we've been able to find. This is extraordinary as part of our history, and we feel that it's very important. I had a close friend of mine here recently who had been living in North Carolina their entire lives, and they came to me and they said, we have never heard of this. And I was taken back. I was shocked. And I wanted to reel them in. I wanted to say, listen, if you don't know about this, there's so much to it, because there was so much going on during these years in the Piedmont area of North Carolina. So much. And I don't want to just be stressing about North Carolina, because there were several other counties and other colonies who did take steps for independence during this same time frame. And I think it's important that we don't neglect them and that we recognize them and respect them as well. I think I'm going to end it here for our introduction. I think this is a good place to stop. Please pay attention to our website. We will be offering updates on the dates of the next series, our next segment for this series. We're excited about this. And like I said, the next one will be about the news of the battles of Lexington and Concord, and when the news reached the Piedmont area, and how it influenced the men in Mecklenburg County to assemble and then go from there. Thanks again, everyone. Wishing you well on your journey to the past. And God bless.